your choice 2022 general election coverage on HOMTV. I'm Mackenzie Decker. Today we're here for a candidate interview with Julie Brixie, who is a Democrat running for 73rd District Representative in the Michigan State Legislature. Thanks so much for joining us today. At this time, we'd like to give you the opportunity to briefly introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today. This is, of course, bringing back many memories since I was on the Meridian Township Board for 18 years before being elected representative in the 69th House District. Very happy to be back here again and happy to be having the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about my campaign and my work history.
Thank you. Each 73rd District candidate will be asked a standard list of questions. For question 1, explain how your education and professional background make you an ideal candidate for 73rd District Representative in state legislature.
Well, as many of our viewers already know, I started out my career in government right here in Meridian Township, and I ran for the Township Board. I served 8 years as a trustee on the Township Board, and I served 10 years as the Meridian Township Treasurer before being elected to the state legislature in 2018. And I've served 4 years in the State House. Although I have been in government for 22 years, I got my start as a scientist in Michigan. I came here to go to school and I never left. I got my master's degree in crop and soil sciences with a specialization in environmental toxicology. And I traveled all over the state of Michigan conducting investigations and cleanups for a consulting firm. And that was my kind of my first career, which was heavy in the sciences. My first job here in Michigan was a soil mapper working for the United States Department of Agriculture. So some of the things that I think are very interesting about the new districts that we have are that I have this agricultural background and science background, and it's been very helpful to me in the legislature so far.
Please tell us about the communities and people of the 73rd District and how you plan to meet their needs.
So this is one of the most unique House districts in the state. It's very large. My district includes portions of Meridian Township as well as Michigan State University campus, but I also have a lot of southern Ingham County, rural Ingham County. I have a number of townships in Ingham County as well as the city of Mason, Stockbridge, Leslie, Onondaga, Vevay Township, White Oak Township, a number of different rural townships comprise the district. So my agricultural background is proving to be very helpful in understanding some of the challenges that the folks in the rural parts of Ingham County are dealing with. The other thing about the people of my district are that I've been out knocking doors, first of all, meeting everyone. Most people who know me know that I'm really very much interested in getting out into the community and working with the constituents, getting to know the constituents and asking them what's on their mind. And I've been doing that. I've been knocking doors all summer. I've been meeting with folks at city council meetings and township board meetings, and really going out to people in the community and asking what's on their mind. My ties to Michigan State University are proving to be very helpful in terms of understanding the agricultural needs that we have here in Ingham County.
What do you believe are the greatest needs and issues within your district, and what are your ideas to meet those needs?
Well, as I mentioned, I've been knocking doors, introducing myself to folks in the new parts of the district, being very familiar with the people here in Meridian Township and in the city of East Lansing, having already been representing them for 4 years. And by far, the biggest issue that is coming up is the right to a safe and legal abortion. We have knocked tens of thousands of doors, and it's the number one issue that's coming up over and over again, is that people are very concerned about preserving and protecting their right to have a safe and legal abortion. I can't have kids anymore, but the entire time that I was capable of having children, I had control over my own body, and I had the right to decide if and when I was going to have children. That decision, if and when to have a child, is one of the most important economic decisions that a family can make. And it's a personal decision and a decision that should be made with the person and their doctor and their family, if that's who they want to involved in that decision. And a woman's right to choose is something that people have been relying on for 50 years, and now it's really at very grave risk of being lost here in Michigan due to the 1931 total ban on abortion that exists today. One of the challenges with this 1931 law is that our legislature is controlled by Republicans, and they have refused to repeal this archaic and draconian 1931 law that bans abortion. So there are no exceptions. We're hearing a lot of stories in the news media, and I'm hearing stories at the door about people who have had to have abortions and why they had to have abortions, and how much they want to preserve that legal right to have access to a safe and legal abortion. The right to privacy is something that we all hold dear. You know, now we go to the doctor's office and you sign a form that says who can see your medical records and who can't. And that right to medical privacy is something that should extend to our uterus. And we shouldn't have to have the government interfering in decisions that are very personal decisions. I don't think the government has any business being inside anybody's bedroom or inside anybody's doctor's office. So that's the number one thing I am hearing about all over my district.
The next several questions will cover prominent issues in Michigan. Please speak on the state's teacher shortage and your plans, if any, to address it.
Sure. I'm very proud to have been able to vote on increasing the school aid fund budget every year that I've been in the legislature and that we've voted on a budget. We had a record-breaking budget this year, addressing some of the challenges we have in education. And really one of the fundamental problems that we're having is that we've had about 20 years of disinvestment in our public education system. 30 years ago, Michigan was a leader in education, and we had the 11th best educational system in the nation. And we really have kind of been racing to the bottom over the last 20 years. The last decade, teachers have really been under attack, and they've been under attack by politicians and the legislature, trying to tell them what they can and cannot teach children, tell them that they don't value them by slashing their funding and threatening their retirement. Teachers are some of the most important people in the world. They represent our children's future, and every child in Michigan has the right and should have access to a quality, affordable education. I'm a huge proponent of education because my parents were both teachers, my husband's a teacher, and one of my kids was a teacher. So this is something that is really important to me. It's very personal to me, and I'm fighting to help our kids get the education they deserve.
Share your thoughts on and any plans for school safety throughout the state.
When I ran for state rep in 2018, so many parents were talking to me at the doors about their number one concern being their children's safety in school. We've seen these large school shootings that have happened all over the country and right here in Michigan. And yet our legislature has refused to act to take any steps to put in measures to protect our kids. There's a couple of very modest measures that we could really implement that would have a positive impact on safety in schools. One of them is extreme risk protection orders. And that would be, it works very similar to a personal protection order, where if someone is being threatened in their home by a loved one, you can get a personal protection order to protect you from that person. The way the extreme risk protection order works is that you petition a court, just like you would for a PPO. If someone is unstable, you need to provide evidence, and the guns can be removed from that person's home. Sadly, one of the biggest impacts of gun deaths is people taking their own lives. And usually suicide is, the impulse for suicide is a fleeting thought. And if the person is prevented from taking their own life, it's a thought that passes, and they can have the opportunity to get the treatment they need. One of the other biggest problems is universal background checks. We're not doing that. And we have loopholes here in Michigan that make it easier to buy a gun at a gun show than it is to buy cold medicine at the grocery store or the Walgreens or CVS. You know, you have to show your ID, you have to get registered into a national database to make sure that you're not buying too much cold medicine, and yet you can go to a gun show and buy a gun without any ID at all.
Share your thoughts on Michigan's current infrastructure and any improvements you plan to make.
You know, the pandemic has been really hard on all of us, and one of the things that it shined a really bright light on was the lack of broadband access for everyone in the state. In our rural communities, we have a lot of problem with broadband access, and that is a big obstacle to the operations of farming that we have going on. They're very technology dependent and use a lot of sophisticated computer equipment, and they need broadband access. So what we saw with the pandemic and kids at home doing remote learning was that people's ability to work remotely and children's ability to learn remotely was very much impacted by their access to broadband. So I would say that's very high on my list of infrastructure. But the other really much larger projects that we've been working on and prioritizing in the legislature are our road network and our water systems. So thanks to the help of the federal government, we've been getting an infusion of billions of dollars for infrastructure improvements because so many communities have been unable to make those investments. And the tens of thousands of road miles that we're working on are creating good, high quality, high paying jobs in Michigan, helping us really recover economically from the pandemic and helping us be in a really good fiscal position.
How do you plan to address economic instability and inflation within the state?
So what we saw happen at the beginning of the pandemic was kind of an interesting economic experiment. And I'm so thankful that our president had experience with the Great Recession, where he was vice president. For me, while I was treasurer of Meridian Township, I got elected at the very beginning of the Great Recession, and we had some really, really tough economic times. Unemployment was over 17% for a while during the Great Recession. And we saw that the stimulus programs that the federal government performed helped us, but the recession really dragged on for quite a long time. Now, this time around, having been through that experience so recently, the federal government acted very swiftly and quickly and really dramatically increased our unemployment benefits, both the amount of money received, who qualified, and the length of time that people could be on unemployment. And what we saw was that we lifted so many people out of poverty by that simple action of extending unemployment. And it was great for our economy. Now we have incredible surpluses in our state budget that we did not anticipate, because even though the economy was, the world was really slowed down and much of the world was shut down during parts of the pandemic, that infusion of cash helped people in their time of need and helped the economy, and it's helping us recover. So what we need to do is make sure that we're careful to put that surplus we have back into the hands of Michiganders who are most in need. Child care remains an enormous problem for folks, and that's an area where we're trying really hard to improve access to child care and reduce the costs of child care so that families with young children can have both parents working if that's what they desire. The governor has been really prioritizing that. One of the other things that I would like to do to help address inflation is repeal the pension tax. That's something that we've been trying to get accomplished, but have been blocked by the Republicans.
Please address the preservation of Michigan's natural resources.
So this is an area that I have a lot of experience in. Right here in Meridian Township, we were one of the first places in the state to institute a land preservation program. And I'm very proud of the work that I did in Meridian. We've permanently protected over 1,000 acres of land from development. And I was part of the effort to help with help pass the Ingham County Farmland Preservation Millage, and that program's protecting over 8,000 acres of farmland. So these are things that I have a very strong record on. We see around us in our communities that our parks and our trails and our natural areas are huge areas of quality of life that people really want to enjoy. And these are things that we should continue to invest in. And my record in Meridian Township and in the legislature shows that I am very strong on investing in the environment and protecting the environment.
Please address Michigan's opioid usage and the statewide presence of fentanyl.
So we continue to struggle with the opioid epidemic in Michigan and elsewhere in the country. This is something that we have made some progress on. I know that I was very much a proponent of one of the farm programs that we had. Certain types of farmers are at incredibly high risk of opioid abuse and overdose, and we really need to make sure that we have health care that is available to everybody so that they can get the services that they need. one of the other problems that we have is that drug companies they have immunity here in Michigan, and so the recent opioid settlement, if not for the aggressive actions of our Attorney General, we would have really been completely left out of that settlement. So we need to continue to work on mental health programs and healthcare programs in general to help address some of these problems that we have with the opioid epidemic.
How do you believe the district in the state of Michigan should approach new or continued diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts?
Well, the legislature hasn't undertaken any DEI efforts, and that's probably not surprising, as both the House and the Senate are controlled by Republicans, and Republicans don't seem to think that we need to do anything as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Here in Meridian Township, while I was on the board, we were working on some things, and I know that they have implemented some programs. One of the things that I found after George Floyd's death was, looking internally and looking at what role I had in all of this, and what could I do to help things, and where is there racism that is part of our systemic government, and where is it hiding, right? So, as I thought about things and looked at things, I realized that our tax policies are really some of the biggest parts of systemic racism in the state. We rely on property taxes to provide a number of different types of services. So schools are in a position where if you have a school in a suburban community like East Lansing, East Lansing a few years ago saw the need to rebuild all of their elementary school buildings. They had mold problems and the like in them. They put a bond question up on the ballot. They put a $7 million bond request out. It passed, and they raised, I think, about $98 million from that bond question to build those 5 new elementary school buildings, and they're wonderful. So they're able to supplement the school aid fund money that they receive, their per pupil funding, with the property tax revenue. Now, the average home value in East Lansing at the time was $200,000. If you drive over to Flint, about 45 minutes away, I'm pretty sure that they also have the need to rebuild their elementary school buildings. And I think everyone can understand that it would cost the same amount of money to rebuild an elementary school building, whether you're building it in Flint or East Lansing or Bloomfield, it's going to cost the same. And yet, the average home value in Flint is only $20,000. So 2 areas that have about the same number of people in them and the same number of properties cannot raise the money needed to rebuild those buildings. If they wanted to raise $98 million, they'd have to have a $70 million tax, a tax 10 times higher than in East Lansing, to people who can least afford it. And this is how systemic racism is wound into our tax policies with devastating impacts. So in our urban areas and in our very rural areas that also have low taxable values, we have communities that have to use all their educational dollars they have to take from there to provide their facilities. Whereas in suburban and more affluent communities, they're able to use all of the educational money from the state educating their children. So this is just one small example of the impact of using and relying on property tax revenue to provide important services, and how inequitable it can be.
We've reached our final question. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the district, and how do you plan on addressing those challenges?
I think the biggest issue that I've heard about for sure is the abortion question, and we do have a proposal on the ballot where people can vote to legalize, to make sure that people have access to safe, legal abortion and codify Roe versus Wade. So that's kind of the number one issue. But right there with it is the threats to democracy that we've had, and we have another proposal on the ballot, Promote the Vote. And that proposal would protect people's rights to vote. The actions that have occurred in our country over the past few years have been very, very troubling, and the residents of Ingham County that I've been talking to are really concerned about being able to continue having democracy here in Michigan. We saw the insurrection on January 6th when the last president refused to leave and have a peaceful transition of power. And we're still feeling those impacts, and in fact, those same forces are at play right here in the 73rd District. My opponent, Norm Schinkel, was the chair of the Board of Canvassers, and he refused to vote to certify the 2020 presidential election. Actions like these are a very, very serious threat to our democracy, and our people in Ingham County are very worried about it. Republicans, independents, and Democrats are worried about this issue. So the fight for democracy continuing and the fight to continue to provide safe and legal abortions are the two biggest priorities that we're facing. And if we have a majority in the legislature, we'll be able to change that, and people have the ability to vote for those things on November 8th.
Would you like to make a closing statement at this time?
Sure. Thank you so much. You know, it has been a total honor and privilege to serve the residents of Michigan in the legislature and in Meridian Township in local government. I never anticipated that I would be in this position when I moved to Michigan 30 years ago to go to Michigan State University, but it has been incredibly moving to be able to help people. My experiences in the legislature during the pandemic were filled with hours and hours and hours of helping people, everyday Michiganders who were in somewhat desperate situations because of the pandemic. And I'm proud of the way that we were able to provide unemployment benefits to a quarter of our population. This is an unprecedented amount of people on unemployment throughout the pandemic. And yes, there were glitches with the system. No one's system is designed to take a quarter of the population. But I'm very proud of the work that we did in my office with my staff to help people in their time of need. That's one of the most important parts of being a representative, is providing constituent services. We help people obtain medical benefits. We help people obtain documents that they've lost. We do a number of outreach efforts with constituent services and have helped thousands of people right here in Ingham County. So it's been an honor and a privilege to serve each and every one of you, and I welcome hearing from you. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please feel free to give me a call at 517-648-0204. That's my cell phone. Or you can reach me through my website at www.juliebrixie.com. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you, and I hope that I have an opportunity to continue serving you for another 2 years in the 73rd District.
Thank you again for being with us. And thank you for tuning into this candidate interview with Julie Brixie, Democratic candidate running for 73rd District Representative in the Michigan State Legislature. I'm Mackenzie Decker, inviting you to watch live election night coverage here on HOMTV on Tuesday, November 8th.